Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 113 of Before the Battle. I'm actually your host for the first time ever, Wes Riddle. I will be joined later by usual host Nick Baldwin of BloodyElbow.com and also our other co-host, Jed Meshew at MMAfighting.com. But for right now, it's just me. I'm going to be riding solo for the moment, and I'm going to be breaking down our two fight cards that we have for International Fight Week. The first happening later tonight, which is the Ultimate Fighter 27 finale, and then tomorrow night, which is Saturday, we have UFC 226 with a great main event between Daniel Cormier, the light heavyweight champion, battling in the heavyweight division against current champion Stipe Miocic. So we've got two belts on the line there. At least if Cormier wins, he'll be able to capture both. If Stipe wins, he'll be able to retain his own. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I hope you all are too. But for right now, I'm going to be breaking down the Ultimate Fighter 27 finale, which is going to be starting a little bit later this evening. And in our main event, we have Brad Tavares, who is a very seasoned middleweight fighter in the UFC with numerous fights. He's going to be battling Israel Adesanya, who is an up-and-comer fighter, still undefeated in his mixed martial arts career, a very talented fighter with a great stand-up game, and that is going to be one that we're definitely going to have to keep our eyes on because it should be a really good one that we'll have tonight. So I'm going to lead off things, kind of breaking down this fight that we have, or this fight card at least, that we're going to have tonight. As I mentioned, if you're just now tuning in, later we're going to have Nick and Jed possibly come in, but for right now, I'm going to be leading the show. And I'm going to be breaking down each fight that we have. I'm going to be honest, I didn't really do a whole lot of film study, or I did not actually watch The Ultimate Fighter 27, besides a little bit, clips and pieces here and there actually on the show. But I do know a little bit about some of these fighters. And the first one that opens up the card is about in middleweight between Gerald Meerschaert and Oscar Piechota. Now, this one is between two fighters you've probably heard about, especially because they've had fights in the UFC before. Gerald Meerschaert, he is a predominant submission guy, and Oscar Piechota, he has a very well-rounded game, both submissions, stand up on the feet, and his wrestling game. This fight is definitely one that I'm looking forward to, and I've been back and forth, kind of on the fence with this one, but coming down to it, when I have to give a pick in the end, I'm actually going Oscar Piechota. I think he's a very well-rounded fighter, a little bit more than Gerald Meerschaert, who is a predominantly submission specialist. Now, we did see Meerschaert in his last fight get a submission, or actually a knockout victory over Eric Spicy with a nasty body kick. So his kicks are pretty good, but I just still question that stand-up game. I feel like we haven't really seen a whole lot of it yet. He's been around for a while, and it seems like he sticks with submissions. So I'm pretty set with an Oscar Piechota pick. I've got him in the second round getting a knockout victory over Gerald Meerschaert. Moving on to the next fight, we have Matt Bessette fighting Steven Peterson. Now, one thing that we do on the show, we usually give our fight of the night picks and everything later on in the card, and we'll get to this, but I do believe that this is Nick Baldwin's fight of the night pick, Matt Bessette versus Steven Peterson. I'm really looking forward to this one too. These two guys are always really scrappy whenever they step in there inside the octagon. This bout is taking place at featherweight. But when I come to a pick, I'm a little bit closer, or at least more considering to lean towards Matt Bessette. I think he's just a little bit more well-rounded in certain aspects of his game. Now, we did see him lose his last fight to Enrique Barzola, and beforehand was on Dana White's Contender Series where he got knocked out by Kurt Holloway, but that was overturned. Matt Bessette is now 22-8 in his mixed martial arts career. Steven Peterson, on the other hand, is 15-7. So I think they're going to go out there and going to put on a pretty fun show. But I just don't think Peterson is as consistent, and I don't think that he is as skilled. I mean, he's definitely skilled, but he just lacks a little bit in certain areas that Bessette excels at. So for those reasons, I'm taking Matt Bessette. I've got him by a unanimous decision, what could be a pretty fun fight. Moving on, now this is actually where we're going to get to some of the fighters that competed on TUF. We have Tyler Diamond and Bryce Mitchell competing in the featherweight division. When it comes to a pick from me, I looked at the TUF's Wikipedia page, to be honest, because I just did not know a lot about either of these two fighters. I did notice that Tyler Diamond happened to be the first pick for Daniel Cormier, while Bryce Mitchell happened to be the second pick. So these two fighters were both pretty talented. and they both didn't really make it to the top. We saw Tyler Diamond get knocked out on the show in one of the later rounds, and Bryce Mitchell, I'm not really 100% sure what happened to him. But Tyler Diamond has a lot going behind him, seeing that he was the #1 seed. He probably wants a lot to prove for himself. I think that Tyler Diamond is going to be able to get the victory here, and that's only because he was the #1 seed pick. So it makes me think that there was something a little bit special about him when Cormier was watching him train and chose him to be on his team. So for that reason, I'm going to take Tyler Diamond. I've got him picked in the fight by a unanimous decision over Bryce Mitchell. And of course, I'm not really being informative in this one, and I wish I did know a little bit more. But we'll have to see. I think that this fight will show who is more capable of doing what later on in their mixed martial arts career. And also, we'll have to just kind of see where they go from here, especially after this fight. Moving on, we have John Gunther and Alan Zuniga. They both fought on The Ultimate Fighter. I had to lean towards an underdog on this card because I didn't have any picks when I was kind of scanning through. And this is when I actually changed my pick from. I had John Gunther in the beginning, and I switched over to Alan Zuniga. And I picked him by a unanimous decision. I don't really know a lot about him besides him getting submitted by Joe Giannetti on the actual Ultimate Fighter show. And when I saw that, I mean, he had a pretty decent stand-up game, and he did get tagged a lot, but I'm hoping that maybe he could pull off an upset. The odds are very close on that fight. And I do believe that this is actually the first fight where the second fight, from what I remember, and I was going to talk about it a little later, and hoping that Nick and Jed would join in, but I know earlier on in the card, Nick actually was the only person to pick Gerald Meerschaert. While on the opposite hand, I'm the only person picking Alan Zuniga in this fight. So when it comes down to it, Zuniga is going to be my pick for this, and I have him picked by a unanimous decision victory. So we're going to move on in this fight card and to the next fight, which is between two fighters in the lightweight division. Luis Pena is fighting Richie Smullen. Two more fighters, of course, that were on the actual Ultimate Fighter show. Of course, I don't really have a whole lot to add to this one just because I just do not know a whole lot about either one. So I am going to have to side with Luis Pena, and that's because I've actually heard of his name. I think he's a little bit more well-rounded from stuff that I've heard about his skill set. And I think when you kind of balance all that in, seeing that Richie Smullen kind of lost early on in the show, I think that kind of adds up into Luis Pena's favor. So I've got him picked actually by a second-round submission. I think that it could be a pretty fun and competitive fight, but Pena is going to be my pick when it comes down to it. So give me just 1 second. I'm trying to pull up because I wanted to be able to put this video on live because I did not have a chance to. So now I'm actually going to tweet it out real quick, and then we're good. So I wanted to tweet it out because we don't have any viewers right now, and I didn't have a chance to earlier. Moving on in the card, we have Montana De La Rosa, who's fighting Rachel Ostovich, and this fight takes place in the women's flyweight division. These two fighters are young in the flyweight division, at least, because they have competed before, but a lot of their fights were both Invicta. When it comes down to this one, my pick is going to go to Montana De La Rosa, and that's because I just don't like Rachel Ostovich's inconsistency in some of her fights. It kind of concerns me. She has 3 losses on her resume, and she has 4 wins, and she looked impressive when she got her submission victory in her UFC debut, which came on the last season of The Ultimate Fighter. But just taking a look at this, I just think Montana De La Rosa has a pretty solid submission game, and I think Ostovich struggles a little bit avoiding those submissions. So for those reasons together, I'm actually taking Montana De La Rosa by a submission victory. She was able to get a sub on the Ultimate Fighter. Her season just lost to Nico Montano. But I think Montana De La Rosa will be able to get a victory here. So for those reasons, kind of combined, she's going to be my pick. Moving on, we have Alessio De Chirico, fighting Julian Marquez. Now, Marquez missed weight by, I think, 5 pounds. He weighed in at 190, and he missed the the limit, which I guess was 186. So he missed weight actually by 4 pounds. The bare allowance, I guess. And he's fighting Alessio De Chirico. And Chirico's a pretty decent fighter. He's kind of been hovering down there near the bottom, though. He just hasn't been able to get the victories that he needs. He was able to get a victory in his last fight over Oluwale Bangbosh, which was a really impressive knee knockout, one of the more brutal ones that I remember of last year. And he has a victory over Gareth McClellan, but that was by split decision. He has 2 losses to Eric Spicely and Bojan Velichkovic. So seeing that those 2 losses are on his resume, and Julian Marquez, he is on a really impressive streak now with a knockout over Matt Hamill, Phil Hawes, and then submitted Darren Stewart in his UFC debut, at least not counting the Contender Series fight. I think that Julian Marquez is a very solid fighter and could get the job done here. And also, when I see that he weighed in 5 pounds over, it makes me think that there was a chance he didn't make weight, or at least didn't try to cut all the way, which makes me think that he's more healthy than he would have been if he tried to make the weight cut all the way to the bottom, or all the way to 185 pounds. So Julian Marquez is going to be my pick. I've got him by a second-round knockout victory. Up next, we've got a really good fight, and this is one that I think most people should watch because they're between fighters that are really talented. This is the only fight that is between 2 fighters that are ranked in the respective weight class. We have Roxanne Modafferi, who challenged Nico Montano after making it to the final round in the last season of TUF, fighting Barb Honchak. This one, again, being in the women's flyweight division. It's going to be a really entertaining fight. I think both fighters have some skill sets to where they could pull off an impressive victory. But I think Barb Honchak's going to get the job done here, and I think it'll be very close. I think Modafferi could have some moments because she is pretty technical on the feet, likes to throw some kicks here and there. Barb Honchak, she's just a really gritty and durable veteran. I think she's going to want to clinch this one up and get it to the ground. And if she can, I think she'll be successful. That's why I have Barb Honchak picked by a unanimous decision over Roxanne Modafferi. But Modafferi definitely has a shot, so I would not count her out. Moving on, we have Alex Caceres fighting Martin Bravo in the featherweight division. These 2 fighters are pretty entertaining to watch. Martin Bravo, he lost his last fight to Humberto Bendene early on in that fight. And Alex Caceres, I believe, is coming off a loss as well in a fairly close fight, which was to Wang Guan, if I got his name right. Juan Wang, either way, however you want to say it. Alex Caceres was able to get the victory, though, in the fight before then over Rolando Dai. These 2 fighters are pretty entertaining to watch. I've got Alex Caceres picked at this moment, but it very well might change to Martin Bravo. And that's because Alex Caceres just shows a lot of inconsistencies. He's really fun and flashy to watch fight, but sometimes that doesn't really show that you're the most talented fighter in the division. And when it comes to skill set, I feel like Bravo, he may not be able to have the most dynamic striking game as Caceres, but I think he's just as talented and knows how to use his punches just as well. So Martin Bravo could pull it off, but Caceres is my pick for this moment. We move on. Now we have our 2 fights that are back-to-back, and these 2 fights are between our finalists on The Ultimate Fighter. The first one being at featherweight between Jay Cuccianello fighting Brad Katona. These 2 were able to make it to the end. I've got Brad Katona picked, and as I mentioned earlier on in the show, I did not watch this season of TUF, but I do know a little bit about Brad Katona, and he's a pretty scrappy dude. He has some pretty good victories and looks pretty solid on the show. Katona is going to be my pick over Cuccianello, and I've got him by decision. And then moving on to the co-main event of the evening, which is also another Ultimate Fighter finale fight. This one is between Michael Trizano and Joe Giannetti, excuse me. I've got Giannetti by a second-round submission, and that's because I've actually seen a few of his fights, and he looks like a really talented fighter. He's got a very, very good ground game, very good at getting you down to the ground and working, being very active for submissions on the ground. Trizano, I feel like, might struggle with that as just because I just don't think he matches up in that same aspect as Giannetti. So Giannetti is going to be my pick. I've got him by a second-round submission. Now we're going to move on to the main event for the Ultimate Fighter finale. And the reason I'm going to say too that I'm moving on pretty quick, of course, because we do not have Nick here, we do not have Jed here. It's just me, and I do not know a lot about these fighters that are going to be competing on the card. But I do know a little bit about both of these two. And our main event is between Brad Tavares and Israel Adesanya. And this is going to take place in the middleweight division. Brad Tavares, now he's been a veteran of the game for a very long time. Tavares is now 17-4 in his mixed martial arts career, coming off a 4-fight win streak, with his last being a knockout, which we haven't really had a chance to see a lot of Brad Tavares knockouts within his mixed martial arts career, but he was able to knock out Krzysztof Jotko in his last fight. And before that, he was able to get victories all by decision over some savvy veterans, Tallest Laces, Elias Theodoro, and Caio Magalhaes, who now fights, I believe, in World Series Fighting, or now Professional Fight League, or one of the two. I'm not. Maybe he moved on to a different organization. I'm not sure. But Brad Tavares is pretty scrappy. He likes to grind fighters out. He does have some decent volume, just not a whole lot of knockout power. And he's pretty good once he gets on top, if he's able to get you down to the ground. When you look at Israel Adesanya, though, Adesanya leads very good with his striking game. Very, very good on the feet. He lands a lot of solid punches. Of course, he's still undefeated, coming off a split decision victory over Marvin Vettori in his last fight. The fight was pretty close, and I think that this fight could be pretty close when it comes down to the very end, because Tavares, if he's able to pressure Adesanya quite a bit and minimize Adesanya's range to possibly throw punches, Tavares might be able to take this fight over. But then again, I feel like Adesanya, if he's able to keep that range, because he knows what to expect from Brad Tavares, because Tavares has been pretty consistent in his style throughout his entire mixed martial arts career, I think Tavares will be able to get the victory, or at least Adesanya might be able to get the victory, because Tavares just implements that similar game plan very repetitively throughout his mixed martial arts fights. So I'm going to take Israel Adesanya in this one. I think it could be a pretty fun fight. I'm really looking forward to it and seeing some of the stuff that unfolds, seeing how Tavares is able to deal with this not really the size, but the striking of Adesanya. See how Adesanya is able to avoid some of the takedowns and circle outside, because I see Tavares coming forward. I see Adesanya trying to work a little bit to the left and the right, trying to get that range back. We'll have to see how that unfolds, but I do think Adesanya could get a knockout victory here, and that's if he lands one of his crazy kicks, which we've seen before, or if he's able to land a brutal left or right hand, because we've seen some of those as well. So those are my picks when it comes to this fight, which is the Ultimate Fighter 27 finale. When it comes to making our bonuses, now this is one thing, of course, we always do, and it's just me right now. This is on my YouTube channel, so I'm kind of leading this on my own. But when it comes to our picks, I actually have, let's see, I'm trying to pull it up. We do our fight of the night, our performance of the night, and our draft games. So my fight of the night that I'm actually giving out is going to be to Alex Caceres versus Martin Bravo. I think that could be a really fun fight that we'll see on the card later tonight. And then I'm going to give my two performances. Since I have Adesanya by a knockout, I think if he wins by knockout, he will be definite to earn a performance of the night bonus. And my second one I gave to Joe Giannetti, and that's because sometimes when Ultimate Fighter winners get a finish on the show, they seem to get a bonus. So I thought Giannetti would be a good pick, and I'm pretty confident in him. My underdog pick on the card goes to the only underdog I actually picked, which is Alan Zuniga, and I picked him by a unanimous decision victory. But I'm not really 100% sure, and we'll hear our picks from our other partners who are going to be joining the show sometime very soon, I believe. But for right now, with all that in the books, I'm going to move on to DraftKings. I did not mention my team. I've got a lineup as well as the other two whenever they join in. My lineup consists of as follows: Martin Bravo, Brad Katona, Julian Marquez, Rachel Ostovich, Oscar Piachota, and Brad Tavares. That's my team, my lineup team. Not sure about Ostovich. I don't know if she's going to be able to get the victory there. And then another, I guess, guy I didn't pick at the moment was Martin Bravo. We'll have to see how he does. And then Brad Tavares. I didn't pick Brad Tavares, but he's on my DraftKings team. So we'll have to see how that kind of works out, which will be later tonight. So I'm going to move on from this and stop talking about DraftKings and my picks for the Ultimate Fighter. And I'm going to talk about UFC 226, which is a fantastic card that we have lined up. And this card is going to feature some fantastic fights. We have a 5-fight main card. Of course, Max Holloway was supposed to fight Brian Ortega, but that fight has now been removed for the card after Max Holloway had some concussion-like symptoms that resulted in him getting pulled from the card. So now the co-main event is actually between Francis Ngannou and Derek Lewis, and our main event is still between Stipe Miocic and Daniel Cormier. So I'm going to start from the very bottom of the card, and it all kicks off in the women's strawweight division live on UFC Fight Pass, I believe. This fight is one between Jamie Moyle and Emily Whitmire. These two fighters are pretty young in their mixed martial arts careers. Jamie Moyle only having 6 total fights, while Emily Whitmire has 4 fights combined. And these two both fought, actually, I believe, on the last season of TUF. I'm not 100% sure about Jamie Moyle, but I know Emily Whitmire did. So we'll have to see how these two kind of pair coming into the fight. I think that Jamie Moyle has a little bit more than Emily Whitmire, and she has a victory over J.J. Aldrich, who's currently in the UFC, along with Amy Montenegro and Kaylin Curran. Emily Whitmire, I don't know if she's really beat the top of the top competition. I don't know. Excuse me, I'm taking a look. She lost both her fights actually one of her fights on TUF, where she got knocked out by Modafferi, and then she lost by submission actually on the finale show to Gillian Robertson by a submission victory. She also lost one to Kelly does something. I've seen her name before, but I cannot pronounce it. Moyle might be able to go out there and get a submission victory, but I've got to pick by decision. I think she's just a little more competent than Emily Whitmire. We're going to move on, and now I'll talk about Dan Hooker versus Gilbert Burns in the lightweight division. This, I believe, and I want to pull it up real quick just to make 100% sure, that this is our our Fight Pass main card fight. Or not main card fight, main fight. It is. Dan Hooker versus Gilbert Burns kicks off the main card for Fight Pass tomorrow night. And this fight is a very intriguing matchup. When I look at kind of how their careers lie out right now, Dan Hooker has 7 losses, but 16 victories. Gilbert Burns has only lost 2. No, Gilbert Burns is definitely going to want to try to get this fight down to the ground because that's where he excels. Very credentialed in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, very talented in those aspects. But the question is, will he be able to get Dan Hooker down? And I'm not really sure if he will, because Dan Hooker in his last 3 fights has looked super impressive, putting together some very impressive victories. His last fight, I think, was a knockout victory over Jim Miller, and before that, he had submitted Mark Diakese, who was a very hot prospect coming in, was able to finish him, giving him his first finish loss, his second loss of his mixed martial arts career, and then also getting a victory, a brutal, brutal knockout over Ross the Real Deal Pearson. Dan Hooker is fighting Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns, now he's been pretty consistent, and a lot of people thought he was going to be the next guy that could maybe even contend for a belt. I remember hearing some people saying stuff like that, but Burns just seemed to struggle against guys that are a little bigger than him, such as Rashid Magomedov and Michel Prazesh. I think that Dan Hooker could keep this one on the feet and possibly get a knockout victory. So for those kind of reasons combined, I actually lean towards picking Dan Hooker by a finish. I think he might be able to stop Gilbert Burns with some kind of maybe knee or some kind of punch if he keeps it on the feet. But Gilbert Burns definitely has a path to victory by getting it down to the ground and landing submissions or looking for submissions. With that fight, we're going to move on to our first fight on the Fox Sports 1 prelims, and that's going to feature a bout between Curtis Millender And Max Grisham, or Grisham, I'm thinking of another fighter, Max Griffin. And this fight is going to be taking place in the welterweight division. Now, this is definitely one that you're going to want to keep your eyes on. Curtis Millender and Max Griffin are two very, very talented fighters who haven't really shown a whole lot yet. Not saying that they haven't shown anything, but we just haven't seen a lot of them in the UFC. Max Griffin is coming off a very impressive unanimous decision victory over Mike Platinum Perry, who's also fighting on this card, which we will talk about shortly. And Curtis Millender, on the opposite hand, is coming off a victory over Thiago Alves, where he was able to knock him out. And it was a hard loss for Thiago Alves. I've never seen him lose like that. Curtis Millender is a very crafty guy on the feet, likes to mix it up with knees and kicks to the body and a lot of dynamic strikes to the head. He just mixes it up very well. And Max Griffin is much of the same. Now, he doesn't really throw a whole lot of kicks. He's predominantly stand-up. And I think that we're going to see these two want to keep it on the feet, to be honest. I really think that maybe Griffin has an advantage when it comes to the wrestling department, but it's not by much. Curtis Millender may have the striking advantage, maybe not so much the power, but he's just very dynamic and crisp with being able to throw off different things. And I think with all that combined, this can make for a fantastic fight. My pick when it comes down to it in the end, though, is actually going to Curtis Millender. And the reason I've got Curtis Millender is just because his technicality, I think, could give him the upper hand. And also, seeing Max Griffin in some of his previous fights has me a little concerned about the later rounds. I remember in the Mike Perry fight, Perry was able to land a lot of volume there in the last round. And Perry was just up in Griffin's face, and Griffin seemed to be slowing down a little bit here and there. The Eliseo Zaleska dos Santos fight, which was one before that, Dos Santos had a really good last round. And then I could go back to Colby Covington, where Colby got him got a knockout victory in the third round over Max Griffin. So that third round concerns me. So with all of those kind of concerns combined, seeing how it's happened so much, I've actually got Curtis Millender by a third round knockout over Max Griffin. Moving on, we've got in the lightweight division, Lando Venati, which is Groovy. Lando Groovy Venata fighting Drakkar Klose. And this fight could be pretty entertaining. These two fighters both are coming off losses to David Tamer. They both suffered losses to him. Drakkar Klose being the first. Actually, excuse me. Lando Venata being the first, then Drakkar Klose. Venata had a really good fight of the night, one of the best fights of the year, which I believe was in 2016, or it could have been last year, 2017. They put on just a hell of a fight. Drakkar Klose, though, with his fight with David Tamer, just was not as entertaining. Klose was circling around a lot and just not landing a whole lot of volume. So when it comes to giving me my pick for this one, I've got to go, I think, Lando Venata. And the reason is because I like his dynamic ability. He's so entertaining to watch. We've all seen him fighting there before, and he's just always game. I don't really like Drakkar Klose's inactivity. I feel like that could really hinder his performance in this one, especially going against a guy like Lando Venata who does throw a lot of volume. And even though Venata lost to David Tamer, I think that we could see a similar fight to what was David Tamer fighting Drakkar Klose. That's Venata being very aggressive, doing a lot of stuff, maybe not landing a whole lot because Klose is circling a lot on the outside. But of course, that doesn't win you the judge's scorecard. So I think Klose is going to lose this one by some kind of decision if he just doesn't show that activity that we've seen in previous fights. With that fight being said, we're going to move on now to the bantamweight division, and this is a fight between two fighters who have been around the game for a while, especially Rafael Assunção, and he's going to be fighting Rob Font. Now, I'm really looking forward to this one as well. I mean, I could say that about every single fight on the card. These two, Assunção ranked in the third slot at bantamweight, Rob Font currently ranked in the 11th spot. Assunção, he won his last 3 fights in a row, was able to get 2 victories, split decisions over Aljamain Sterling and Marlon Moraes. Now, those two were very close, and he was able to come out victorious in his last fight against Matthew Lopez. Now, when I look at this fight, I really want to think that Assunção can get it done, but for some reason, I'm thinking that Rob Font could actually pull off a victory here. And that's because he looks very, very dynamic on the feet. I say dynamic a lot, but his last few fights, His last fight, he showed a very composed game plan going against Thomas Almeida, and Font was able to capitalize in the second round after Almeida slowed, and Font was able to get the knockout victory. And that was Thomas Almeida's third loss in his mixed martial arts career. I think that his stand-up game could actually pose some threats to Assunção. I also don't like Rafael Assunção's inactivity. He has not fought. He fought 3 times in 2017, and he fought once in 2016 in a fight that he lost to TJ Dillashaw. But then before that, he hadn't fought since 2017. And his last fight came in November of 2017. So it's actually coming very close already to a year since that fight has taken place. So I really want to favor Rob Font in this one. And Font is actually my pick. I've got him by a second round decision victory. Moving on, we've got Uriah Hall fighting Paulo Costa, Borrachina. This one taking place in the middleweight division. I'm really looking forward to this fight. We've got 2 fighters who love to stand on the feet and strike and try to bang. There was a little concern at the weigh-ins with Uriah Hall coming in. Didn't look like he was going to make weight. Turned out he did make weight. He's now fighting Paulo Costa, who's a very talented, aggressive Brazilian fighter. When it comes to giving my pick for this one, I want to pick Uriah Hall, but I definitely have to go Paulo Costa. Costa just looks like this new breed of fighter who's coming in with a vicious game plan every single time, trying to knock your head off completely. And a lot of the times that we see Uriah Hall struggle in fights, it's because he's under pressure. We saw that in the Krzysztof Jotko fight, which Hall did win, but the first round, Hall was hurt visibly after Jotko landed some decent punches. And some of Uriah Hall's other fights, like the Robert Whittaker fight, we saw him get pressured quite a bit, and he really struggled in that fight, just trying to be able to land and have decent accuracy. Also, the Mousasi fight and the the Mousasi fight and the Derek Brunson fight, he was pressured quite a bit, and ended up getting stopped in both of those fights in the first round. And look at that.
I'm back.
Already got a guy back.
On some asshole rap shit.
Jed Meshew. What's happening, man?
Chilling, hanging. I am at work, as we mentioned, that some people may or may not have seen previously. And it's Friday and everyone else left the office, and there was a thing that had to be done, and your boy was the last man around to do it. So fortunately, I think that's it for the work day for me. But now I get to talk with you about some fights.
Dude,
maybe again, whatever. Where you at? What's going on? What did I miss?
Dude, I've been struggling because I've been struggling just because I've kind of been all over the place. Having to do it again was like, oh my god.
It's a real disaster.
It was a disaster.
Real bad one.
This is one I definitely don't want to go back and listen to because I've really been struggling. But I've actually made it. I made it through the whole card. I tried to talk quick, and now I'm currently at 226. I made it through the whole TUF card.
Perfect. Way to go.
And I'm currently actually at Uriah Hall versus Paulo Borrachina. So I made it pretty far.
Oh wow, you moved right on through 226. What's the status on Nicholas? Is he going to join us or no?
So he might join us, but I'm not 100% certain.
What a coward.
We'll have to see. Pretty cowardly, you're right.
Such a coward. I'm going to message him right now.
You should.
Nick, you are a coward. He's not showing up to the dance like you should. Sweet.
Well, I appreciate you joining now. And
I'm happy to join.
Yeah, I want to go back, and I can finish up about Hall and Borrachina later, but I'd like to get your take on some of the early fights because I feel like UFC 226 is a really good card.
It's dramatically better card than the TUF finale.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. And, I mean, the first fight,
I was about to say, even having said that, the first fight of the evening, Jamie Moore, Emily Woodmeyer, do not care to talk about it all. I'm taking Jamie Moore. She's a favorite, but we can move past that and get on to more juicy topics of conversation. But I will ask for posterity's sake, because I happen to have Nick Baldwin's picks. He's taking Jamie Moore. Wes Riddle. I don't know if everyone saw previously, so I am going to do a very, very brief recap. Last week, UFC Singapore, I'm your triple champ. Me and Nick tied on both picks and bonus predictions, but since I had the hammer, so to speak, over him there, I already had the belt. You got to be the champ. You got to beat the champ to be the champ. I am winning those, and I edged both of you out in DraftKings. I think I had 414 points to Nick's 402, and you're 400. So real tight battles, but I am the winner of all of them. And rolling into this week, we had a lot of action. But so we have to keep track of all our picks always. So give me your Moyle Whitmire pick.
So you know what, Jed? I wasn't going to show up until I just saw you call me a coward.
See, look, kids, peer pressure does work.
So here I am. I can't stay for long. I wasn't planning on this. I'm leaving to the Palms where the TUF finale is happening in 25 minutes. And I have yet to edit my interview with Mike Figueroa, which I have to get up before.
Lord knows you don't want to miss Tyler Diamond versus Bryce Mitchell. Fights like that.
That's actually a good fight.
Fights like that don't happen every other day. So, and you have a nosebleed just fighting through. What a trooper!
Yes, what a trooper indeed. Well, give me all the credit in the world.
Hold that thought 1 second, Nick, so Wes can give me his more.
I'll be back. Yeah.
All right. my pick for this fight, I actually took Jamie Moyle. I just don't think Emily Whitmire – I mean, she only has 4 fights. She lost 2 of her fights. She won 2 of her fights. She won 1 on TUF, the show, and then lost 1 on the show. She's basically 3-3. I just don't think that she's as talented at this point in her career as Jamie Moyle. Not saying that Jamie Moyle's terrific, but I think Moyle will be able to get the job done. So I've got her by a decision.
I concur with your assessment there. When Nick comes back, we'll have him just kind of pick and choose some spots since we have all his picks, and then you and I can get back. So while we work our way up to catching up to you, the next fight of the evening, obviously you already talked about it, so you don't need to run back down for the viewers. Gilbert Burns, Dan Hooker, though, is a fight I am particularly excited about. Both of these guys are doing big things in the division. Like, let's just be frank. Gilbert Burns, you may be misled. If you are purely a UFC EA UFC 3 player, you might be misled to think that Gilbert Burns is not a great grappler because he is less talented at grappling than Conor McGregor. But this is actually a world champion jiu-jitsu player, so do not let EA UFC fool you. He's a world champion jiu-jitsu player. His last fight, Dan Moret found out he can also throw them things a little bit. So has Jason Sago. And it's just his last few fights, Burns working with the Black Zillion camp. I know that's not really a camp anymore, but I do think he's still working with Henry Hooft. I could be wrong on that. Don't quote me. Really improving his striking, which complements the fact that he is one of the absolute best submission grapplers in the world and certainly in the UFC. Has a good record anyway in the UFC. His losses are to Michel Prazeas, who is a sort of a lightweight, but let's be honest, he's a welterweight now, I think, and if he's not now, he certainly has fought many times at fake welterweight. And Rashid Magomedov, obviously a pretty good fighter, but on the other end of that, Dan Hooker has just been on an absolute tear lately. I know he's a Tiger Shulman guy, but he obliterated Jim Miller the last time out. Mark Diakiese came in with all this hype and got friggin' tapped by Dan Hooker. He's just shown a well-rounded game. But it wasn't that long ago that he lost to Jason Knight, who is a fun action fighter and a guy I thought might end up being really good, but then didn't. And is just kind of going to sit in that middle, like a good action guy to have around, but not ever really going to be a threat to crack the top 20 of the best division in the sport. But Daniel Hooker seems like he can maybe do that. But I really like Gilbert Burns a lot, man. I think this is a close fight. I sort of expected the odds to look this way, but at the same time, just because Hooker's been on such a tear, at the same time, I do think maybe knocking out Jim Miller, even as impressive as that knee was, maybe we take a little too much stock in that. Jim Miller has been around a long time, a lot of years on him, a lot of miles on him. Mark Diakiese, also an unproven dude. And then Ross Pearson, another guy who's probably older than he actually looks, at least as far as fight-wise goes. So, and, the two kind of young, good fighters that Daniel Hooker fought are Jason Knight and Yair Rodriguez. He lost both of them. Now, granted, those were at featherweight. The move to lightweight does seem to suit him, but I don't know, man. Dorino just looks so good in his last few, and he's got such a strong grappling game. If he can in any way implement that grappling game, then it's definitely a wrap. Hooker can't really compete with him on the floor, and if he can't, then we're going to really see how much of his striking has come along. I think you got to favor Hooker on the feet in general. But I sort of just favor the overall game of Burns. I think he can stay competitive enough on the feet, and I do think he can get a takedown or two and just kind of take that edge over in the ground. So give me Gilbert Burns to pull the upset. My first upset pick of this card, at least. I think I had a couple on the TUF finale, but yeah. So, but who did you take in that one, Wes? Because Nicholas is also on the Burns upset train. Are we unanimous for an underdog?
Man, I'm glad you're here because I kind of flew this. I flew through this fight.
This is one of the best fights on the card.
I know it's one of the best fights on the card, but they're all so good, man.
It's a really good fight card.
It was. Yeah, I was just trying to go a little bit quicker and it was quick too since I was on my own. But I went Dan Hooker actually. The reason I took Dan Hooker was thinking that maybe he could keep it on the feet, and I feel like right now he's just kind of on this momentum train to where.
Heard it here first, guys. Wes Riddle likes hookers.
I do like hookers, and I do like Hooker.
It is definitively proven. Wes Riddle oh, look, Nicholas is back.
Unintentionally admitted it. But no, I'm just kidding. But I do think that Dan Hooker, if he can keep this one on the feet, that's definitely where he can excel. I don't know if he's as powerful of a hitter than Gilbert Burns, but I do think that he could definitely land some solid punches and go out there and get the job done. But I think that Gilbert Burns is definitely a solid underdog pick if you're going to take an underdog, and that's because we have seen him implement a pretty good wrestling game in some of his fights. But for some reason, just Gilbert Burns, I feel like sometimes he struggles a little bit when he gets up there to the guys that you think he could be, like a Rashid Magomedov or that Michel Przecz, which he just seemed to struggle a little bit and lacking a little bit in that fight. But Dan Hooker is my pick for that one. Nikolai, are you there?
I am here. I'm going to be very quick. Dan Hooker's a better striker. Gilbert Burns.
Don't even give us this shit. You're not going to be here for long, and we wouldn't make it through the whole card. So why don't you, since you're going to be dipping out soon because you've got big important fighting things to cover, why don't you just kind of run over some spots in the card that you particularly want to talk about? Tell us what you're feeling on picks and just kind of the fights you're particularly interested in.
Sure, I'll do that as I'm editing. So if I just stop talking out of nowhere, then don't be alarmed.
Or you could not edit and just do this for like 10 minutes.
I'm leaving in 20, and I still got to get our boy Mike Biggie Rhodes up.
Yes, it's pressing. I know the people are really excited to hear Mike Biggie Rhodes.
It is pressing because we talked about Gerald Meerschaert's fight because he's cornering Gerald Meerschaert, and Gerald Meerschaert's the first fight on the card.
So that should have been done like 2 days ago.
But it wasn't.
I'm just letting you know.
We are.
I'm letting you know.
Hey, I was going to interview Biggie a few days ago, but when shit happens, shit happens. Is that not right?
I mean, that's on you, man. You run your YouTube like you're going to run your YouTube.
This is actually Wes's YouTube, so.
I know. I'm talking about your edit stuff is going on your YouTube.
No, it's actually on Severe MMA's YouTube channel.
Oh, okay. Well, you run Severe MMA's YouTube like they tell you to run it. I'm looking forward. I am looking forward to next week just going and finding that video and posting the number of views it has, just to do it to you.
23. That's gonna be my prediction.
I'm going with high since that interview is going to come out roughly around the time Meerschaert's walking to the cage. If you're lucky.
When does the first fight start?
7.
7.
Oh, okay. So we still have a couple hours.
Yeah, we do. So it'll be up in like 15 minutes, guys. So we're good. You guys talk and I'll pipe in when I can.
Perfect. Well, I guess the next fight that we were going to have to talk about, if we were going in order on the card, was a fight that I'd already talked about, but it's in the welterweight division between two really talented stand-up fighters that always bang. Curtis Millender versus Max Griffin. Jed, what are your thoughts on this?
The fight's interesting, but I just don't care to talk about it. I think they're both pretty good prospects. And Max Griffin, obviously, interestingly enough, coming off that win over Mike Perry, who is on the main card, he is buried in the prelims. Curtis Millender beat the ever-loving shit out of Thiago Alves. Now, granted, Thiago Alves is not Thiago Alves that we used to know and love, but he's still Thiago Alves. Melinder's had a weird career, man. Like, the dude is good, but he sort of just kind of wallowed in ignominy in Bellator. Then made a quick stop in LFA and showed up here at the UFC and beat the ever-loving shit out of Thiago Alves, which was cool. And so now he's like a real dude. I think he's a little bit better than Max Griffin. Like, that's it. I think they both do the same sorts of things, but I think Millender can maybe have a little more success in the clinch. And then that's just really it. Like, it could be a real fun throwdown, but I just don't. This is a fight that I'm excited to watch, but I don't have too much to say. They're going to come. They're going to throw hands. One guy is probably going to fall over more than the other guy. Maybe not for good, but at least get rocked. Give me Curtis Millender for the decision win. Westwood, what did you take? I need to know.
Yeah, I took Millender by a late knockout in the third. I thought maybe a later one because Griffin seems to struggle later in the fight.
Okay, fair enough.
That was just kind of my take on that one.
Nick, are you jumping in, or can I tell the people that you are taking Millender by unanimous decision?
You can tell the people that Nick is taking Millender by unanimous decision.
It appears. Then moving on, Wesley. We're
going to move on, yeah. Our next fight takes place in the lightweight division, and I'm not really sure what to make of this one, but it could be pretty entertaining. We've got Lando Groovy Venata fighting Drakkar Klose. I ended up taking Venata. I've got him by a second-round knockout. I think we could see some of the same maybe that happened in the David Tamer-Drakkar Klose fight. Jed, what is your take on this fight?
I am also going to take Venata. Both of these guys are guys who lost to David Tamer, who is really good. Venata is weird one because he's got a bad record for the UFC, 2 losses, a win, and a draw. But it kind of doesn't speak to what all he can do. You know, one of those losses, his debut short notice, Tony Ferguson. He dropped Ferguson. He almost upset the entire 155 apple cart there. The David Tamer loss. David Tamer's a great fighter. And then the green draw, he was kind of winning in parts, but then he also just kind of got fucking jawed in other parts. He's a little bit of a wild man, and sometimes that wild is a little too wild, a little too much. But other times it's just awesome. And I think he has a really high ceiling. I definitely think he has a higher ceiling than Drakkar Klose, but it's just whether he kind of gets to that ceiling or not in the fight. And I'll be interested to see. I just don't. I mean, in the end, I'm taking Venata because I think he's more talented, but I do think he has a little bit of a boom bust to him, a little bit of a all or nothing kind of result to how he fights. So I won't be super surprised if Drakkar Klose can make this a little muggier, a little dirtier. And then just kind of win with a little bit more consistent style going forward. Maybe work some more takedowns. I know he shoots them not all that irregularly, you know, so maybe that can control Lando, get him off pace a little bit. But at the end of the day, give me Groovy Lando to do maybe I hope it's some type of spinning wheel kick dope shit. But any way you slice it, I'm taking Lando Venata.
Perfect. I think that's a good pick. What is Nick's picks for this one?
Nick is also on the Lando Venata train, which then moves us seamlessly along because apparently he's left us now too. He says he'll be back, but I mostly think he's a liar and a coward. So we are quickly approaching where you were. But if you can real quick, because I will tell you Nick is picking Rafael Assunção by decision. Why don't you give me just what, you know, your pick for the fight, and if you want to re-say something about it, and then I can do my breakdown and we can move on and be caught up.
I'm actually going to take Rob Font in this one.
I like it.
This is a decent fight to go for an upset for. And I think a lot of people counted Rob Font out in his last fight when he fought Thomas Almeida, was it? Thomas Almeida. Knocked him out in the – and I remember the percentage of people that picked him was about the exact same. I'm pretty sure it was 83 to 17% that picked Almeida over Font, and Font won. And it's currently the exact same as it was on the UFC pick'em for Assunção over Font. So I think Font's pretty good. I think he's a little bit underrated of a fighter. I think maybe he could get an upset, so we'll have to see.
Hey, you know, that's pretty cool. I am not taking that. Long-time listeners of the show will know I trained with some dudes who train with Rafael Assunção. Personally, this dude is criminally underrated. He's one of the 3 best 135ers in the world and has been for like 5 years now. Look at his record. He doesn't have a lot of the huge names, but he has beaten everybody he's fought at bantamweight with the exception of one fight with TJ Dillashaw, and he has a win over Dillashaw. He and Dillashaw have split fights, and this dude is no closer to sniffing a title shot than you or I are. He's fighting Rob Font, who maybe is ranked like at the lower end of the rankings, but this is a guy. Assunção should be fighting one of the guys in a title eliminator, and he's never going to get to do that because the UFC want him nowhere near the fight. And frankly, that's all it needs to know. Like, I know that he is one of the very, very best bantamweights in the world, and I think Rob Font is okay, but every time Rob Font has faced a real step in competition, Lineker tooled him up. I think Assunção can do the same. I think Assunção can take Font down and really just make this a complete no contest in that regard. Rob Font does not have great takedown defense, and Rafael Assunção is a legitimate Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He can get the takedown and just sit on him if he doesn't just kind of outwork him on the feet. Just straightforward for me. Nikolai is taking Assunção by decision. I think I already said that. And that brings us up to Costa Hall. Did you already talk about Costa Hall, or were you about to?
I think I talked about it a little bit, and I was saying how much Uriah Hall struggles when he fights pressure fighters, and that Paulo Costa is exactly that. So for kind of those reasons, I'm taking Paulo Costa. I had him picked by a first-round knockout.
Well, I love where your brain's at. I'm going to do this with the Skittle in my mouth because I'm really hungry. Nikolai is also taking Paulo Costa with a TKO in round 2. And I don't have much else to say. More often than not, Costa's going to win the fight. Every once in a while, it'll be one of those fights where Uriah Hall throws a spinning back kick that kills Paulo Costa, and then that'll just be weird in a Uriah Hall fight. But, yep, Costa's likely going to win, so I'm going to stick with him.
I feel like most of the fights are like that. And luckily, the fight afterwards is a pretty entertaining one, I think. I don't know what your take is going to be on this one, but I know I'm looking forward to it. Gokhan Saki is fighting Khalil Roundtree here in the light heavyweight division. Saki still pretty young in his mixed martial arts career, but we do know how great of a kickboxer he is. And Khalil Roundtree is still, he's okay. He's pretty talented, but he does have some pretty powerful hands. My pick in this one, I have to go Saki. I think his skill set is just on a whole different level when you compare these two. And seeing that Roundtree is absolutely abysmal at wrestling, and knowing that he's going to probably have this one on the feet, I just think that Saki's going to be able to work Khalil and probably going to knock out in the first round. I need to run to the restroom real quick, but if you want to break down what you think about this fight, who's your pick? Can I ask before I go?
I'm taking Saki. I'm taking Saki, and so is Nick.
Cool. All right, I will be back momentarily.
Yep, I got you.
Break this one down.
I got this. So I am taking, as I said, I'm taking Gokhan Saki. Pretty straightforward, honestly. I think what Wes said had a lot of, I guess, merit's not the right word because that feels derogatory. I think what he said was a lot of accurate. And that's stupid language, but I was answering a work message. I think Gokhan Saki is a really good fighter, or a really good striker, and Khalil Roundtree is not a good wrestler, and he has about 4 minutes of gas. So Khalil Roundtree is going to come out, he's going to throw bombs, try and get Gokhan Saki out. Doing that, he's probably just going to get jawed up quick anyway. But even if he lands bombs, Gokhan Saki is a dude who has fought in Glory, fought in K1. This guy is a super accomplished kickboxer. He fought some of the greats that ever have done it in the sport of kickboxing. And he's only been stopped a couple of times, and most of those were by injury. He never really got colded or knocked out. He got hurt a little bit. How is Khalil Roundtree going to bring something to the table that Peter Ertz isn't bringing to the table? If Khalil Roundtree decides that he is going to come in and wrestle, I think he can have success doing that for about a few minutes. But like I said, he doesn't have a lot of cardio to him. He just doesn't have the gas tank to do it. So at the end of the day, maybe he can win the first round on the back of wrestling and hope that Gokhan Saki is so gassed out from that he can't really put forth much of an offense. But I just don't see that happening. I don't think Roundtree's going to finish him if it even gets to the floor. And I do just think that this fight's going to take place on the feet for the most part. Khalil Roundtree's going to get jawed up there. And then certainly once we get past the first round, Roundtree's just going to have no gas and be a sitting duck. He drops his hands a lot when he gets tired, and that is an absolute death sentence since Gokhan Saki. So I think Gokhan Saki's going to have a big, impressive knockout. I am going to pick the end of the first round, like around the 4:30-something mark.
I'm just going to jump in very.
Already told the people you pick Saki. Feel free to
No. I don't really care about that fight, but I have 2 minutes, so I'll just really briefly, I guess, talk about the main event. Stipe, I'm picking Stipe by decision. Decision I'm not confident in just because they're two heavyweights and they both have power in 25 minutes. That's a lot of time without a knockout, but I think Cormier will be durable enough in the fight. Stipe definitely will be. Cormier's wrestling could come into play here, but I just think Stipe will be able to keep it on the feet where he has the reach advantage. He's so much taller than DC. One thing I did find interesting was that DC weighed in higher than Stipe this morning. So maybe, Cormier does get him down and is able to hold him down. We'll see. It's a great fight. I'm looking forward to it, but I think the pick has to be Miocic. As far as the co-main goes, I got Ngannou by knockout. Wouldn't be shocked if Lewis is able to get him in the clinch and get him down and not quite do what Stipe did to him, but sort of along the same lines, the same game plan. But I just think, Stipe is the better wrestler compared to Black Beast and all that. And Ngannou, he weighed in 10 pounds lighter this morning. He looks a lot leaner. I'm thinking his cardio is going to be better. I'm still going first round KO, so that ultimately that won't matter, but just something worth noting. Felder Perry was my pick for fight of the night. I guess you guys will talk about that a bit later. This is going to be a war, but you got to favor Felder here, even though he's on short notice. He was in training camp, and the weight cut wasn't an issue because it's up a weight class. So this is going to be a great one, but I think he's just a cleaner fighter. He's just a better fighter. Mike Perry is wild. He's crazy, and he's good himself. He has power, and he's just, but when you take away all the nonsense, he's actually a smart fighter. But Paul Felder's legit. I think he gets it done, perhaps inside the distance. Chiesa Petta, great fight. Close one. Chiesa missing weight. It's tough to say what that'll mean. He's a better grappler. Pettis loses to a lot of grapplers, but I think Pettis is able to keep it standing. He is one of my only underdog picks on this card. That is it. I'm out of here. See y'all later.
Peace, homie.
You have fun.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to have fun with that card, but you have fun.
Try to. It's about all you can do. Well, I guess with all that, now that Nick kind of broke down some of his picks, and since we've talked about the light heavyweight fight between Saki and Roundtree, we can move on to what is now a catchweight fight between Michael Chiesa and Anthony Pettis. What was supposed to be at lightweight had Chiesa made weight, but now he will forfeit 30% of his purse. Anthony Pettis was able to make weight, what I believe was a little bit of a struggle for him, but was able to make it at the very last minute. Jed, I'm going to start with you. What is your take on this fight? Are you really looking forward to this one between the former UFC lightweight champion and Michael Chiesa, who's coming off a loss and definitely in need of a win?
This is a tough one for me. I will put it out there. I think Nick said it, but he's taking Pettis. He's on the underdog here. It's a tough fight for me to call for a couple of reasons. One, it's just really difficult for me to ever pick against Anthony Pettis, even in spite of the fact that he hasn't looked good in a decade. It's been forever since Anthony Pettis looked like even a shell of his former self. He's so bad now. But I do know the offensive heights he's capable of. And so it's really there was a point in time where we're legitimately and not without reason considering that Anthony Pettis might be one of the best offensive fighters in the sport's history. And very shortly after that, he has just fallen off a cliff in a way that is remarkable. Johnny Hendricks is kind of the only guy that jumps out of the page at me who had such a precipitous decline so fast. And so there's probably a couple of facets to it, probably a lot going on in general. But realistically, it's still wild to me to think that if this fight happened 5 years ago or whenever the hell Anthony Pettis was champion, 5 years ago, something like that, 4 years ago, Anthony Pettis would have just murdered Michael Chiesa, or at least we certainly would have thought he would. Going in, we would have thought this is a freaking squash match. Are you kidding me? Mike Chiesa, that dude coming off TUF, who literally all he can do is grapple. Like this would just be an ass kicking. Like this is a dude who got tapped out by George Masvidal not that long ago, which is insane. Like it should show you how good George Masvidal is. But yeah, like it's just the times change, the clock turns, things get freaking wild. Because now Chiesa's a favorite and with good reason. Like it's just hard for me to pick because if you saw in the last fight, Anthony Pettis turtled a bunch against Dustin Poirier. Now, granted, Poirier was beating him up on the feet, kind of working him over with shots, and that inclined Pettis to give him up his back. But if he gives up his back like that to Mike Chiesa, it's over. Chiesa's one legitimately world-class, incredible skill is getting to the back and choking people out from there. And if Pettis turtles like that, this fight's a wrap, son, in the words of my colleague Luke Thomas. But if he doesn't on the feet, I think Chiesa's huge. He's abnormally large. He stated this is his last lightweight fight. He's going to move up. But I think Pettis is such a strong kicker. He's such a good kicking game. And Chiesa is open to body shots. He's a sick jitsu freaking fighter. And so he doesn't like that. I forget the fucking coach's name. Shit, that's gonna kill me because I can't think of it. Rick Little just like doesn't believe in blocking shots to the body, and so I could see Pettis just kind of carving up them guts on Chiesa and getting a stoppage. Because at the end of the day, I know Mike Chiesa is a good fighter. Like I know that he is because he has good wins, but damn, do I not believe it just because he's so narrow. Basically, the only like super limited fighter who I think is a really good fighter is Khabib Nurmagomedov, because he's so much better than everyone else at the thing that he does that I can believe like, oh, he can be one dimensional, even though I actually think he's not. Mike Chiesa is a really good grappler, but he's not such a good grappler that I'm like, holy shit, this guy's amazing. So it's hard for me to pick against Pettis, all of these reasons, but at the same time, Pettis hasn't given me any reason to pick him. Like he beat Jim Miller in a kind of lackluster affair. He choked out Charles Oliveira in a fight he was probably losing before Oliveira just shit the bed. I don't dock him too many points for losing to Max Holloway. It's Max friggin' Holloway. It's sort of the same with Dustin Poirier, but Edson Barbosa is a bad style matchup. I guess he beat Eddie Alvarez, actually, even though he lost on the cards. And then Rafael dos Anjos beat the hell out of him, but he just doesn't look like a guy who wants to be in there anymore, and that's always kind of the decider in close bouts for me. How much do I think you give a shit about it? And Anthony Pettis has not had the feel of a guy who gives a shit lately. So give me Mike Chiesa by decision, but I don't feel confident at all. It's a real tough one for me.
I have been on the fence on this one, similarly like you were mentioning. I think Chiesa is a pretty solid fighter. I think Pettis is still a solid fighter. The question is, who do I think is going to come out victorious? And I wanted to go for an underdog on this one, so I'm actually taking Anthony Pettis. And it's a really tough one for me to call because Chiesa seems to excel against fighters who are predominantly strikers, but kind of have weaknesses against fighters who are better with jiu-jitsu and wrestling and different games like that. But I think that Anthony Pettis, if he still seems motivated. I thought he fared pretty well against Dustin Poirier. Maybe not the greatest. I was there in attendance for his last fight, and he didn't look terrific, but he still looked solid. And then suffered a rib injury there in that third round or fourth, whatever it was. But I mean, this fight, when it comes down to it, I think that it could be pretty fun. Chiesa could be looking for those takedowns, of course, and trying to find submissions, and he very well could get one. But on the feet, I feel like Chiesa's always struggled just a little bit dealing with fighters who work well with utilizing solid range, and I feel like Pettis does that fairly well. So in kind of that scheme of things, I've been leaning towards Anthony Pettis, and I'm going to stick with him. I've got him by a decision victory in this fight. So I have actually run into a little situation to where I actually need to leave because I had something to do and someone to meet. But what we could do, we could just kind of break down and give our picks for the rest of the card. Unfortunately, this has been just a cluster of a mess for this entire thing. I think you're muted. I believe you are. I cannot hear you. Not 100% sure.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I don't know what that was about. Yeah, let's run down our picks real quick. I've got Nick's in mine. I'll fire through all that, then you can give me all the stuff, and we can just call it a day and end this big clusterfuck that we're in.
Dude, that's exactly what it is.
Did you take Chiesa or Pettis? Sorry.
I took Pettis.
Ooh, okay, look at that. Double underdog pick action. We also have some dissension here. Nick is taking Paul Felder by TKO round 2. I am taking Mike Perry. Again, I don't feel super confident. I do want to give a brief pick breakdown here just because I am taking an underdog. I think Mike Perry is just an underrated guy. He's not even 4 full years into his career, and he already gave Santiago Ponzinibbio barn burner of a fight, a super tough fight. Had him rocked, could have maybe won that fight. And Ponzinibbio is one of the 3 best welterweights on the planet. This dude who's barely been fighting for any time at all, just raw athleticism and talent, has made good things happen. And now he's training at Jackson Wink, one of, if not the best coaching staffs in the world. I think we're going to see big improvements. Couple that with Felder coming in on short notice. I know that he's a lightweight, but Felder is an enormous lightweight, so that's pretty close. I don't think the size is huge. I think Felder's just a guy everybody underrates, or not Felder. I think Perry's just a guy everybody underrates. I'm taking Perry. Where are you?
I thought about taking Perry, but I'm going to take Paul Felder in this one. I think it's going to be a very fun fight to watch. I took also a second round TKO, but I'm definitely looking forward to it.
All right, our co-main event, Francis Ngannou, round 1 KO, says Nick. I also agree, Ngannou. I don't think he's going to get him out of there, though. I'm super interested in this fight. I think the lines are a little bit off. Ngannou has great hand speed, a strong striker, potent striker at range, and again, another guy who's barely been fighting is just starting to put it all together. Derek Lewis is just so damn tough. Dude is ruggedly tough. He won a full fight with Mark Hunt. He is durable, and he's really good once he gets on top. If he can find a way on top of Francis Ngannou, this ain't going to be the Stipe Miocic 20 minutes of peppering shots. He's going to hammer that dude down. So I am taking Ngannou just because I think he's a better athlete, or at least he's a little more physicality. But, there's a real chance in my mind for Derek Lewis to pull the upset. What about you?
I didn't think about Derek Lewis getting on top, but Francis Ngannou was my pick as well. And I did take him by first round knockout. I know that we kind of disagree on that, but I think it's just I still kind of question Lewis's chin. I know he is fairly durable, but we did see Sean Jordan and Matt Mitrione earlier on get the best of him in the striking department. And I feel like there's still like the likelihood that could happen again. So I'm taking Francis Ngannou by a TKO.
Main event time. Nick has Stipe Miocic, he already said, defending the title. I am going the other way. I'm taking Daniel Cormier. Basically, this comes down to a couple real quick things. Cormier is one of the best fighters we've ever seen, top 10 fighter of all time. He competes in a better weight division, and I've never believed in Stipe. It's not that Stipe is bad, but I think Stipe is I think he's a talented fighter. I think he benefited a lot by the fact that his prime has come in a time when heavyweight is terrible and mostly filled with old guys. And so the names that are the best guys in the sport, and that's all you can be to the best guys in the sport and the guys put in front of you. I understand that, but they are guys that are well past their sell-by dates. You guys whose the prime of their careers were previous, and the best fighter Stipe, could ever face up against, the best matchup for him is Cain Velasquez, who's permanently injured us, apparently. So I think that he's gotten a little bit lucky in that regard. I think Daniel Cormier is the best fighter Stipe Miocic is ever going to fight. And I just think Cormier's pressure style is a much more effective than Fabricio Verdum running headlong into punches. I think he's going to be able to pressure Stipe. He's going to be faster than Stipe. And once he gets inside, I think Stipe is going for a ride. I know Stipe can wrestle, but he can't wrestle like DC can wrestle. So I think Daniel Cormier is going to win a decision as ball just gets rolling downhill. Where are you in the main event?
Just to keep it short, I'm pulling for Daniel Cormier, but I did pick Stipe Miocic.
All right. Well, that brings a wrap to that. Let me run down our bonus picks here. Nick has Felder Perry as his fight of the night. He has Francis Ngannou and Paulo Costa Borrachinha taking bonus, performance of the night bonuses, and his underdog pick is Anthony Pettis. Obviously, what about you, Wes? Where are you on that?
I'm gonna give my fight of the night to the main event, Stipe Miocic, Daniel Cormier, and I will give my 2 performances. My first being to Francis Ngannou, and my second to Gokhan Saki.
I'm sorry, wait, that was Saki?
Saki and Ngannou for
And who was your underdog pick of the week? You did have a couple.
I guess between Rob Font and who was the other underdog I picked? Do you know?
Anthony Pettis.
I guess since Nick took Pettis, and I'm pretty sure Pettis is going to win, I'm going to take the risk with Font. I'm not sure.
I like that.
We'll have to see. I'm more confident in Pettis, so I won't be surprised if Nick takes that.
I got you. I am taking my fight of the night. I'm taking Ngannou Lewis, as I broke down. I think this is going to a decision. I think it's going to be a heavyweight slugfest, honestly. I think that's a ridiculous pick, and people are going to think I'm insane, but I'll be insane. My underdog pick, obviously Daniel Cormier. I think he's going to win. He's a big underdog on the card, which is also insane. My performance pick, definitely taking Gokhan Saki. I think he 100% KOs Khalil Roundtree, which gives him a great shot at it. And then it's a little up in the air. It's a little harder to predict a performance because I'm predicting a lot of decisions in that. I could see a Borrachinha prediction there, but it just doesn't make me all that excited to pick Borrachinha. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be bold. I'm going to be a bold man and take Mike Perry to knock out Paul Felder.
I like it. That's a good one to have. Now we move on to DraftKings, and I'll go ahead and run down mine real quick. I've got Michael Chiesa. I think there's going to be some commonalities that we share, but we'll have to see.
Okay.
I've got Michael Chiesa. I've got Daniel Cormier, who's extremely underpriced. Paulo Costa, Paul Felder, as you and I and Nick all mentioned, very underpriced. Curtis Millender, and Gokhan Saki.
All right, we have a lot of similarities. I am also taking Chiesa, Cormier, Felder, and Saki. I'm rounding my team out with Francis Ngannou and Lando Venata, although I sort of may end up changing my mind about the Ngannou prediction. We'll figure out that as it goes along. Felder is just like, I know I'm picking Perry and I'm even putting him on my performance team, but Felder costs $7,400, which is insane. He's the betting favorite. So it makes zero sense that he's the price he's at. So I just took it and assumed. But yeah, those are my picks. I'm feeling okay about my squad. It'll be interesting. I know you got to get out of here, Wes. Thanks for bearing through this clusterfuck with me and making this happen any way we can.
Yeah, man. I think it worked out pretty good, and I try to get a little start on the show, and of course it wasn't the best, and I don't think the viewership will be great on this, but at least we were able to crank it out, and hopefully we can get back on a rail next week. Besides that, if you want to plug real quick, and then I'll plug just shortly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Follow me along on Twitter at Jed Meshew. Read all my writing at MMAfighting.com, including I had a feature go up at the end this past week that I'm going to be pimping out a bunch over the next few weeks. It is a hypothetical World Cup of MMA. Pretty proud of it. Super fun to do. Super fun to write. Been getting a lot of wonderful reviews on it. So check that out if you haven't, because I think it's awesome. So yeah, that's all I got. What about you?
Good deal. You can follow me on Twitter at AllThatMMA. You can find my writing over at MMAsucker.com. And besides that, that's really it for me. Jed, I appreciate you trying to work out your time to get on the show. I'm glad I was able to make it work, and I'm glad Nick was able to tune in for a little bit. Of course, it wasn't really the most put-together show in the world, but we were able to get through it. Besides that, I appreciate everybody tuning in. Feel free to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Maybe I'll upload more in the future. We'll have to see.
Who needs put together? We did the damn thing. And most importantly, Wes, do you know what this means?
This means we're the official hosts.
Well, that's true, but I was going to say it's 5:30. I am officially off work. I get to go home, make dinner, and start work this evening covering UFC The Ultimate Fighter 27 finale. So you have fun, sir. I've enjoyed it. Love you guys.
Peace out, fellas.